Yes, what is up? Welcome back to another episode with myself, Knowlesy, and today we're going to be looking at how to set up the FPL draft. One of the main issues with the FPL draft and the lack of engagement is the lack of understanding, and one thing that people have issues with is actually setting it up. So today I'm going to go through everything, how to set it up and what are the best settings to have the most enjoyable experience possible. So I'm going to talk through how to do it on the app and on the web page. I'm going to assume that most people are going to be using the app, so I have a picture of the interface on screen right now. If you have created an FPL team already, which I assume you have, this is the screen that you're going to see on the app. Now, right at the bottom of that picture, it says Fantasy Draft, and a lot of people just don't see this. It's right there in the middle of the screen. If you're changing your team, normal FPL, top left, pick team, top right, transfers, draft is just right in the middle of that page, so you're going to go and click that. If you haven't set up a draft already, this is the screen that you're going to see, and it's very simple. It says create or join a league. So if you are just inputting a code that someone has sent you, you click play now. Similar, if you want to create a unique league with different settings that I'm going to talk about, boom, click play now, and it's going to show you the following screen. And if we look at the options, we have down the bottom, join a mock draft. A mock draft is where you and 4, 6 or 8 other people join a draft to see how it works. So there are some positives and negatives about a mock draft, and I wouldn't really recommend it. It is good if you want to figure out how the draft actually works in a snake-like fashion and the timer and all that if you are new to it. But the problem with the mock draft is that very little people are active. Okay, so that means that players are going to be selected on their draft order, and you're not going to get a real feel for where particular players are going to be drafted in what round. So unless you are a real beginner and you have no idea what happens, go to a mock draft. The problem again with the mock draft is that it takes so long, and if you're new to it and you say, oh, is this how it works? It's not going to be enjoyable. So in general, I would avoid. So public leagues, if you cannot find enough people to join your league, if there's only 2 or 3 of your mates interested, you can join a public league. Okay, so that gets random people from across the world and they all join a league, which is a good way to do it if you really want to play. But again, the main thing we want to do is either join or create a private league. If someone else has set this up for you, all you have to do is click join a private league, put in the code exactly like normal fantasy, and you're away to go. But let's say we are creating a private league. You are the commissioner. The person that creates this is known as the commissioner. So if we're looking at the setup and what is the perfect setup for the draft, first and foremost, we have our team name, our favorite team, so on and so forth. You need to name your league. Okay, so we'll call this League A. And you have a couple of options. Now, this is where, our history and our engagement with the draft has come into it and what we think is best. So you can select 2 different things. You can select head-to-head or you can select classic. That's obviously your scoring systems as we see in normal FPL. Normal FPL is done mainly on classic. You have some head-to-head leagues, but they're not really enjoyable. In the draft, that's flipped. And we highly recommend going for head-to-head leagues. There's a couple of reasons for that. So some of the reasons for head-to-head leagues are because you get to play against someone directly. In normal FPL, it's very unlikely you're going to ever change your team based on your opponent's team. You're going to make your decisions to get the most points possible and you're going to let it ride. But in head-to-head in the draft, because there's a select pool of players, it is way more tactical when you're playing against someone. Now, we will let you in on some of them tactics in other videos, but in general, head-to-head is the way to go. If you are a regular draft player, you can understand the pain when you lose by a point. So a lot of the time in the draft, you're always looking at your opponent's team. Because numerous players can't be owned by many managers, you are looking for who they own. So if you're playing against Haaland one week, you are really looking for how Haaland performs. Every week you're worried about how Haaland performs in normal FPL, but in the draft it might be only one game week. I have played Classic before and it can be enjoyable. It can be a bit more tactical and more for the long term, whereas in head to head you can pick up a player for a fixture and drop them off. So again, overall we prefer head to head and we get more enjoyment out of it. Next is the number of teams, and the number of teams makes a massive difference in the draft. Again, because players can only be selected by one manager, the number of teams dictates how good teams can be. So if you only have 2 managers in a league, well, both teams are going to be phenomenal. You're going to have the best 30 players in the game, and you're rarely going to have to worry about a random player that's playing for Brentford. Now, if we look at the other end of that scale and look at leagues that have 16 teams in them, we have a huge difference. We have 240 players that have to be selected to fill everyone's team. The issue with 16 team leagues is that there's so little players to choose from on the waiver each week, and some people may know what the waiver is. If you don't, it's essentially all the players that aren't picked on draft night. It's one of the most important parts of improving your team throughout the year, and if there's 240 players already picked, anytime a good player comes on that waiver, they're going to be snapped up. Now, if you take one team away, that's an extra 15 players on the waiver. 2, 30, so on and so forth. So if you go all the way down to 12 teams, you have 180 players that are picked and an extra 60 players available to choose from on the waiver. So our recommendation is pick a league size anywhere from 8 to 12. Now, the combination of 8 to 12 and head to head is good, because when you have maybe 10 to 12 teams, more so, you're playing a different person each week. There's loads of different people to play. If you're playing a 6-team league head to head, you're going to be playing the same person every couple of weeks, and it's going to get relatively boring. But if you're in the 8 to 12 range, you're going to have enough players on the waivers, you're going to have diverse teams, right? And you're also going to have many opponents each week, which makes it more interesting. Now, setting up the draft night. This is fairly simple. We want to select a date and time that you're going to do the draft night. Don't worry about this too much, because this can be edited very easily. So if I pick maybe the week before FPL starts, the 14th of August, I can click that, change my time zone, and we can create the league. Now, as I said, this can be changed and this can be arranged between the players in your league. So don't worry too much about this. Once you get your players, send out the codes, you can all agree on a time. And we are on to the last section of the settings, and that is trades. So if you are new to the draft, you can trade players among managers, but we'll be doing loads more videos on how that actually works and how to get one over the line. There are some settings. There's 4 options. None means that you are not allowed to trade players at all. We do not recommend this. All means that trades are processed straight away. So if manager A and manager B decide they want to do a trade, once they both accept it, the trade is done. We probably don't recommend this either, and I'll explain why in a second. Administer, or your commissioner, i.e. the person who set up the league, decides the trade. So again, if I'm the commissioner and player B and C are doing a trade, I have the final say. They both have to accept it, and then I get the final say. This is the one we recommend. And then the last one is manager veto. Again, this is decided by all the managers in the league. It's not a bad one, but activity can be an issue. So again, we do not recommend none, because you want to trade when you're doing the FPL draft. It's one of the best things about it. The issue with all is that there could be potential cheating. So if I'm in first and I talk to the guy in last and say, look, give me Haaland, you're not playing anymore, this is for A, B or C, maybe the manager accepts, and then that causes some arguments in the league. So that's probably not a good setting to pick. Manager veto is not a bad one, because at least everyone gets a say, and it has to be over 50% of the managers agree this is a fair trade. The issue with that is that maybe all the managers don't see it and they don't vote. So that can delay some trades, and trades have a time limit as well. So you kind of want to be as effective as possible, so that you're not waiting and then it gets locked out. Now, we recommend administer, which is essentially the commissioner, the person who sets up the league, decides whether the trade should go through, whether it's fair or not. This can still be done in a manager veto type of way. So let's say you have a group chat and you put the trade in and you get everyone's input. But the reason why it's good is because this person is usually on the ball. This person is usually checking fantasy regularly, so on and so forth. So maybe both managers can get in contact with the person and say, look, there's a trade there waiting. Now, it will come up on the commissioner's feed. So when they click into fantasy draft, the trade will be there and they can accept or reject it. Okay, so they have the final decision. It's probably the best way to go to avoid cheating, to avoid inactivity, and to get the best and fairest outcome. Boom. Once you have all that done, click accept and your league is created. You have a code exactly like normal FPL. You send it out to whoever you want in the group and you're in. You can edit the draft date, whatever date you want, on the agreed upon time. These are what we think are the best settings to get the most enjoyment out of the FPL draft. I'm sure some people like it other ways, and that's fair enough. I've played many other ways, but to get the most enjoyment and benefit out of the draft, this is the way forward. If you are new to the draft and you want to figure out all the other things I was talking about today, make sure you drop us a follow on all socials, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, the whole lot, and keep up to date. FPL Draft Duo out. Boom.